How about me? Okay.
Yeah, you sound very good.
Anything you want to tell him, Dr. D, before you get started?
Well, I'm going to be giving Mike this for 2 minutes, this for 1 minute, this for 30 seconds. He will take the breaks. You ignore those signals. If you're in the middle of a story or what have you, go ahead and wrap it up, and then Mike will take us to break. And then when we get started again, I will count him down 3, 2, 1, you're live, and he will start again, and we'll try to just keep right on a rolling through.
And I'm sure Billy could probably teach us how to do this right.
Probably, yes. I would not put that past him.
Okay, I'll get out of the way. Mike, it's all yours. Have a great interview, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you coming in with music? Are you coming in with an intro, Jeremiah?
No, I don't usually do an intro for your shows, but I will come in with the music of the breaks.
Bring the breaks. Okay,
Yeah,
but not right
I'll
now.
just mention the music, the song, I mean, you might want to say, Jeremiah, what are we hearing? What are we listening to? And then I can
He'll
say the
come in.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All
And
right.
you have the list in front of you if you want to ask him about any of those songs, right?
Yeah, I got him.
Okay. I can send it to you again if you don't.
Excellent.
All right, Billy, you're looking good,
Can't
looking
wait.
good.
Can't wait to hear your interview. I'll shut up now.
All right, and here we go. In 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Hey, everybody. This is Mike Gormley sitting in with Jeremiah. He's actually here with us today. It's the Jeremiah Show, and Jeremiah Higgins is with us. Richard is with us, and especially with us is Billy Vera, songwriter, singer. It's a long list. We'll get into it, but it's fantastic to have you here, Billy. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Good to see you for all these years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We kind of worked together, we worked together for a little while between my being at A&M Records and starting the management company with Miles Copeland. I did a little PR work, and one of them was Billy and the Beaters. So it was good fun at that point, and that's when things were happening.
On Alpha Records.
Exactly. I wanted to start on not a sad point, but as we record this, we're about 24 hours away from having heard that Ronnie Spector passed away. And Billy, you have a history with that lady, and you worked with her, and I believe you even dated her for a while. And just wondering about your thoughts on Ronnie Spector. We could probably guess them, but you may have some inside thoughts.
Yeah, somebody, a fan just sent me this morning a YouTube video of Ronnie appearing on the Rick Dees late night television shows when we were the house band there. And she was plugging her memoir at the time, and she, in the interview, she really was very open and honest about our relationship and her problems with alcohol at the time, which thank God she overcame eventually. And she went on to live a happier life.
She was, talk about New York. That was a New York lady. I mean, even though she certainly lived out here for a while, recorded out in LA, but kind of a New York icon, right?
Oh man, I've said this so many times. For New York guys in my age group, the Ronettes were the sex symbols of the generation. I mean, when you went to a Murray the K theater show, and if the Ronettes were on there, boy, the boys just went, the heat was up about 150 degrees in that room, in the theater.
Yeah. And they knew it.
Oh yeah, they played it. They played it very well, especially Ronnie. I mean, Ronnie was not a good, but a great performer. I've played, over the years, I played behind many rock and roll stars and mid-level stars and big stars, from Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis on down. And she may have been in the top 2 or 3 of great performers. I mean, she had the ability to charm an audience and make them love her. you know,
Yeah.
which is Be My Little Baby, you know, I mean, that was it, boy. She charmed my mother. My mother wasn't easy.
Yeah. Now you can see that on the Tammy show. You can see when the Ronettes are let loose. They're doing their routine, they're doing Be My Baby, but then they break out. I've forgotten what cover tune they do, but maybe
What I say usually they would do.
yeah. But then she let loose and she's practically out in the audience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I got a phone call last night from Joey D. And Joey was probably the first person of note to discover them.
Hmm.
They came into the Peppermint Lounge when Joey D and the Starlighters were, you know, killing it there.
Yeah.
And Joey and them, the club people thought that they were a singing group that had been booked there. And really, they were just three very hot girls who came to come to the club. And so he brought them up on stage and they did What I Say and knocked everybody's lungs loose.
That's what they were just in line to get in or something. And
Yeah. And of course, when you look like they looked, I mean, you go to the front of the line, dude.
they stood out.
You know, and then so Joey took them on the road. Of course, their mother, or Ronnie and Estelle's mother, BB, she said, I'll let them go, but you have to have Aunt Helen go along as a chaperone. So, you know, they were just really nice, clean cut girls, despite what they looked like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever write with her or for her?
No, I never. By that time, you know, of course, she had left Phil. I was the first boyfriend she had after Phil Spector. You know, she escaped from him and went back to her mother's house. And I met her. I had the house band at a number of oldie shows, which were very popular in New York at that time, the early 70s. And I did 13 shows at the Academy of Music there. And she was on the show. First performance since she married Phil. And after the show, or after the rehearsal, she said, I hear you're the best conductor in town. I'm looking for somebody. I said, well, I'm playing for the Shirelles right now, but I'll be happy to help you out when the Shirelles aren't working. And so we got together. And you know, I played for her and conducted which was really tough because you would run into these club bands, you know, that had to back you up, and most of them couldn't read music and they stunk, you know. They were a little bit younger and they didn't really know the Ronettes hits. So I ended up dismissing everybody in the band except the drummer and the bass player. And I'd tell the drummer, look, you play 2 and 4 at the tempo I count and nothing fancy. And bass player, you stand next to me and I'll yell the chords to you as they come along. And that's how we somehow managed to get through those shows. But she was always great. Always.
That drummer had to play Hal Blaine licks.
Well, Hal Blaine or Earl Palmer.
Right.
People always forget about Earl.
I know, and you're right. He's as much a part of it as Hal Blaine was.
Oh, more so. I mean, Earl had metronomic time. Hal could speed up and slow down a little bit, you know. My old bass player in the Beaters, Chuck Fiore, got a gig with John Denver, and Hal was the drummer. And it was a great band. It was what's his name? The great guitar player that played with Ricky Nelson, James Burton. James was on guitar, and the same piano player that played with Elvis, whose name escapes me at the moment. And Chucky was on bass. And Chuck had, like Earl Palmer, had metronomic time. And boy, he would call me from the road. He says, I can't stand playing with Hal. I said, what do you mean? He's one of the great studio drummers, played on millions of sessions. He said, man, he speeds up, he slows down, he's driving me crazy. I said, Chuck, you got the highest paying gig in the business.
Right.
You know, playing for John Denver, he's the most generous star. I said, keep your mouth shut.
Just do it.
Stick it out, and as long as you can. And then finally, and I said, don't say anything to John. Of course, finally he did. And who you going to pick between an unknown guy and Al Blaine,
Yeah, no kidding.
But Earl had the great fills, that he used to use on those Little Richard and Shirley and Lee records. And I loved Earl. I knew him pretty well through Paul Gayton.
And he was on legendary recordings before he ever got to LA.
Oh yeah, Earl came in 57. Aladdin Records hired him as a drummer and A&R man, but he played on just tons of records. I mean, he played on everybody from Little Richard to Frank Sinatra. He was just.
Yeah, he played jazz, a lot of jazz too, right?
Well, yeah, Earl started out as a tap dancer.
No, really?
Yeah, he told me he danced on the streets in New Orleans.
Wow.
And of course that says a lot about where he got his time and those amazing licks. Those fills that he played were just astounding.
Listeners may have gathered, Billy's not only a songwriter and a singer, incredible singer, and overall musician, but a music historian, really. I mean, just a walking encyclopedia. And I don't know, is that a hobby, or do you end up people calling you for advice on things, or is that part of your day to day?
It is. In fact, this afternoon after we get off, I have to write an obituary for a British magazine on Ronnie. But I've written lots of liner notes. I got my Grammy for Ray Charles liner notes. After doing 7 sets of liner notes for Ray, I finally got the Grammy for the 8th one.
Yeah.
Which was the complete ABC Paramount recordings. And I've done a lot of reissue work for different labels, either Rhino or Capitol Records. I did a lot for Capitol and Savoy and Specialty. In fact, I wrote a book about Specialty Records called Rip It Up, the Specialty Record Story.
Yeah.
And the founder of the company, Art Roop, he's still alive, 104 years old and sharp.
No, really?
Yeah, he's as sharp as you and me put together, man. And I talked to him, and he was nice enough to write a foreword for my book on his label.
Well, the whole New York, I mean, you're an iconic member, although you've been in LA for 30 or 40 years now.
1979.
Your background's New York. It's strong. You were born in Riverside, but that's just because your dad's work got you there, right?
He was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
World War II. Yeah, he was a.
And then you were off to New York eventually, but or New Jersey, I guess in your case.
No, New York.
New York. Oh, sorry about that. Oh.
Lived up north of New York in Westchester County, White Plains.
Oh, cool. You as a writer, performer were on kind of the tail end of the Brill building era, but you were still part of it. It may have been the tail end, but you still felt some of that activity. You still went knocking on doors with songs and played them on a piano for people or whatever the process was, right?
That's right. I had made a record with my little club band that kind of made a little noise, in Connecticut, and it was #1 in Pittsburgh, and then I wrote the other side, which was a top 10 record in Louisiana and Texas. So afterwards, the company said, we just hired this guy, Larry Spear, to run our publishing. And Larry Spear was the son of a famous publisher, also named Larry Spear. And he said, you got any more songs as good as that one that you wrote for us? I said, well, yeah, I got some songs. So I played him a couple, and he took them, gave me $35 a piece advance for them, paid for a demo. And this one song that I'd written for this new girl singer, or so I thought, named Dionne Warwick, being naive enough not to know that Bacharach and David had her all tied up. Anyway, we made a demo of it, and my guitar player, as it turns out, was a a James Burton fanatic. And so the record with me singing as my little, 20-year-old, 19-year-old white boy, it sounded like a Ricky Nelson record. So Larry ended up getting us a Ricky Nelson record. First song I ever took to a publisher.
Amazing.
Yeah. But me, here's how stupid I was. I said, who'd you get me? He said, Ricky Nelson. I said, Ricky Nelson, he's white, man. He can't sing this song. He said, you ungrateful little putz. That's New York talk for asshole. He said, Ricky's going to do your song 5 weeks in a row on the Ozzie and Harriet show. He said, you're virtually guaranteed a chart record. And of course, it became a chart hit.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, what an easy business.
Yeah, right. You found out.
But by that time, so it was a cottage industry at the time, and if you had a record on the charts, everybody on Broadway knew it. And so you could get into anybody's office. And I did. And that landed me a job at a publishing company called April Blackwood Music.
April Blackwood. That's a legendary company. I mean, there are not only a lot of music came out of there, but a lot of, I think, singer, songwriter people emerged from there as well.
Van McCoy had the office across from me. And next to me was Chip Taylor, who wrote Wild Thing and Angel of the Morning. And Chip sort of became my songwriting mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And the first song that he and I wrote together became a hit for Barbara Lewis. It was called Make Me Belong to You. And in those days, you would, if you had the right kind of song, you'd get a lot of cover record.
Yeah.
I even got Fats Domino on that song, and who was one of my childhood heroes.
Yeah, that'd be a thrill.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then finally, eventually I got to meet Fats, and the guy that introduced us said, this is Billy Vera. He wrote one of your songs. He said, oh yeah, which one? That New Orleans voice of his, that
Right.
wonderful voice. He said, I told him, Make Me Belong. And he started singing it. And he said, I got 5 children and that's their favorite song of mine. So I thought he was just, blowing smoke.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, I was befriended when I moved out here by a fellow named Paul Gayton, who grew up with Fats. And I told him that story, and he said, no. He said, if Fats said it, he meant it. He's not sophisticated enough to bullshit.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Funny line.
I couldn't figure out how that could be one of his kids' favorite, because he had more hits than any rock and roll star.
Yeah.
And then I figured it out. I said, well, his kids were young. And when he was having those hits, they weren't aware of those. And by the time they were old enough to be aware of what their daddy was doing, that's the song they heard.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But in different languages,
Yeah.
Your songs would be, it was cool.
That work led to, in a roundabout sort of way, your first hit, which led to performing at the Apollo, which is a great story. So, but you and Judy Clay somehow got together. You can tell us how that worked out. Okay. With a fantastic record that was a starting point for you as a performer. I'm thinking, yeah. Well,
it's the one that got me known. Yeah.
Yeah, you were performing for years before that, but
yeah,
this one got you through into maybe some other venues you may not have got to otherwise.
Oh yeah. Well, at the time, my little band and I were working at a club called the Country House, later known as the Deer Crest Inn, which was the top club in the area. It was on the New York side of the Greenwich, Connecticut border.
Mm-hmm.
Drinking age was 21 in Connecticut and 18 in New York. So we'd get all people coming from all over Connecticut. And on weekends, we'd have hit record acts, one on Friday and one on Saturday. And so I got to know all these wonderful people, whose records I had bought. And so I got to know a lot of people in black show business that way. And anyway, after we had the Barbara Lewis record on Atlantic, that was our entree to Jerry Wexler, who was the big cheese up there.
Mm-hmm.
So Chip and I wrote a song as a duet, hoping that maybe a couple of Atlantic artists would record it. So we played him the demo, and he pounded his fist on the desk. He says, "Man, that's a smash. Get rid of the girl in the demo and I'll record you on Atlantic Records." Well, to me, that was heaven, because
Yeah.
all my favorite artists, the Drifters, the Coasters, Bobby Darin, Ray Charles, all on Atlantic. He said, "But get rid of the girl." So we got rid of the girl. She was this demo singer, you know. And I was friendly with Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, who were on Atlantic. So I called up one of the girls, Nona Hendricks, who was in the group. And she had a voice that was lower and I thought would blend well with mine. And so we recorded the song. And then their manager got in on the act, and he was afraid that if she and I had a hit, that she'd leave the group and all that. So we had to audition 20 more girls. And they all sounded like they should be singing Stephen Sondheim songs. You know, it was just not right. And finally, we were almost ready to give up. And Wexler said, "Listen to this girl, Judy Clay. We just got her. She's a cousin of Dionne Warwick. And, you know, see if you like her."
Well, pause there for a second, if you don't mind. We're going to go to a commercial, and then we'll pick it up when we're done with that stuff.
Great. Good.
This is the Jeremiah Higgins Show, and we have our very special guest, Billy Vera, with us today. It's Mike Gormley.
And we're going to go to break, Mike, with Room with a View, Lou Rawls.
Cool.
We'll be right back.
All right.
We're clear.
You want me
Stand
to
by.
bring us back, Mike, with the
Sure.
we're coming back with Dolly Parton. I Really Got the Feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, you picked a couple of good ones.
Yeah, they're all good. Billy, should I say Billy Vera and Dolly Parton, or should I just say Dolly Parton?
Well, I didn't sing
we
on
know
it,
that, right? So
Just, yeah, I wrote it and she sang it.
just, yeah, okay. Or
If
should
you
I say
have-
written by? But we,
Written by Billy Vera.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Same with Room with a View. You know, Lou Rawls sang it, Billy.
Written by Billy Vera. Okay, you got it.
I have a room with
If
a
you have Papa Come Quick by Bonnie Raitt, that's a good one too.
We do. And you know what? When I was a kid, my parent that we played that album over and over and over. And that was the song that I remember. So when I played it today, I'm like, oh, I love this song.
Good.
I have such good memories when I was a kid listening to that with my parents.
There's another one that sort of became an underground classic called Don't Look Back by the Remains.
Yeah, and I think we got that, don't we here?
No, we don't have that. We don't have the remains on this list.
We got to have a part 2 with Billy and keep
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
playing
do
his
a part
music.
2.
Okay, kids, it is time to start segment 2 in
I'll bring us back, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. This is actually the Mike Gormley Interview Series, and it's been a little while since Mike's brought us such, he brings us such great guests, such great stories. And today we've got the great Billy Vera. Mike, you always bring the very best people to the show, and I appreciate it, and the listeners appreciate it. We came back with, we went to break with Room with a View, written by Billy Vera and sung by Lou Rawls. And we came back with Dolly Parton's I Really Got the Feeling, which was also written by Billy Vera. And Mike Gormley, turning it over to you.
All right, and
Fascinating interview.
we were talking prior to, and not to ignore Dolly Parton, by the way, but we were talking about something I want to pick up on, which is Billy's now recording with Judy Clay. There's being put together by Wexler at Atlantic Records, and I interrupted you, Billy. Maybe you can pick up wherever you left off on the proceeds.
Well, unlike most records which start in the Netherlands, netherworld, in weird parts of the country, Storybook Children started out in New York. And it became like a number 3 on the pop stations and number 1 on the black stations. As a result of that, we got a booking at the Apollo Theater, which to me was a dream come true. I mean, I was a customer at the Apollo when I was real young. And
I think you mentioned once you were there for the famous James Brown at the Apollo recording.
yeah, best show I ever saw in my entire life to this day. It was just astounding.
And you weren't on stage, you were in a crowd.
I was in the audience. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So we get this booking. Now, in those days, the Apollo was 5 shows a day, 7 days a week. So you were booked for a week. And the new show started Friday morning. So Thursday night, after the last show of the previous week, you went up there and rehearsed with the house band. So I show up, Judy shows up, and the stage manager, who's a man named Honey Coles of the famous tap dance team Coles and Atkins.
Should you explain, this is a mixed duo,
Yes, racially mixed.
which was rare at the Apollo and rare at the time, right?
It had never been done.
Mm.
Especially-
That's rare.
Yeah, that's about as rare as it gets. And they hadn't seen our picture.
Wow.
So when I walk in, Honey Coles, he says, "Oh," he says, "you know, Harlem hasn't seen you yet." He said, "but I have an idea." Now, this is a month after Martin Luther King was killed.
Mm.
And there was rioting going on across the river in Newark, New Jersey. And so you could see that people were a little nervous. He says, "what I want you to do," he says, "Judy, when you enter from stage right, and Billy, you enter from stage left. And you let her take 3 steps from the wings, and then you make your entrance." So I go, I'm there. And he put us on second, because the opening act is always a flash act, which means it's a lot of choreography, exciting songs. The second act is usually a new act or one that's, not that great. And then it gets better, and then finally the star. And so I go 1, 2, 3, enter. I hear 1,500 people gasp. And I hear people going, "That's him, that's him." We sang our little song, and
Because these people, just to interrupt, but these people had been hearing this on the radio.
yeah.
I mean, it was pounding on the radio,
Oh yeah.
but they hadn't seen you. So they just, and it was a lot of black stations as well as pop stations. So therefore they made the assumption it was a black duo, I would assume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Judy was a gospel singer, previously on the Drink Art Singers, which is the group that was formed by Dionne Warwick and Dee Dee Warwick and their mother,
Mm.
and Lee, the mother's sister, Cissy Houston. So Judy was, and Judy was one of the lead singers. That's how good she was. She was a great singer. Anyway, we went out there and we did it. We killed, and we did our little 3 songs, and went up to the dressing room, and Honey comes upstairs, and he says, "I'm changing up the show." He said, "I'm gonna put you on before the star." He says, "because ain't nobody gonna follow you two." And that was it, man. We'd get standing ovations, we get encores, and which is.
What was your set? You obviously did the hit.
But we opened up with. By that time, we'd had our second record out,
Okay.
Country Girl City Man. And that was more up tempo, so that was a good one to open with. And then in the middle, we would either do "Let It Be Me" or another song from our album, "When Do We Go?" And then we would close with "Storybook Children." You always close with you were a manager, you close with your hit.
Right.
And that was it. And we became very popular up there, and they had us back. And next time we opened for the star was Wilson Pickett.
Really?
Yeah, Pickett was a great performer, but very insecure. One night we came off stage, and we blew him away, and I hear Pickett yelling at his band leader. He says, "How the hell am I supposed to follow that shit?" He said, "Get out there and play an instrumental." Wilson Pickett could follow anybody, but he was so insecure that he didn't like to follow anybody that was good.
Yeah.
I always felt the opposite, that if you follow somebody good, then the audience is happy, and it's going to be easier for you to.
Yeah, they're setting it up better.
Yeah, you don't want to follow a bad act. They're in a bad mood by that time.
So we're going to go into another commercial, and we're going to do so by listening to that very song, Storybook Children by Billy Vera and Judy Clay.
Cool.
Okay. All right.
He did it for me. I
He
didn't
did
have
it
to.
for you, so don't say another word.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just
No,
kept
no,
going.
that's, I don't
That's
need to come in
perfect.
at all, Mike. You're doing,
Hey,
you're
yeah.
great.
Exactly.
Do you want to bring yourself back, or do you want me to bring it back?
Oh, you bring it back. It's a Jeremiah show, for Christ's sake.
The Mike Gormley interviews.
Yeah. I'll bring you back.
Yeah,
Yeah, you bring us both back.
That's right. It's time now for Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. No, I'm kidding. All right, here we go, gentlemen. Jeremiah, in 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. This is the Mike Gormley Interview Series. Every so often, Mike graces us with a great interview like we are enjoying right now with the great Billy Vera. We brought you back with Papa Come Quick, Jody and Chico by Bonnie Raitt, written by Billy Vera. One of my favorite songs from childhood, one of my best memories. I really love this song. Mike?
There's a lot of songs that come from Billy Vera, but those were two of the best we just heard on the way out and on the way in. So it's, well, okay. You're at the Apollo. I want to step back to you playing the Apollo. How many times did you play there?
We did twice. And then Judy was signed. This is a little inside record biz. She was signed to Atlantic through Stax Records, which was distributed by Atlantic. The distribution deal ended. So contractually, we were no longer allowed to record together. And Wexler called me backstage at the Apollo one day, and he said, you know, he told me what I just told you. He said, but don't worry, I found a song for you on Bobby Goldsborough's album. He said, take a listen to it. If you don't like it, I'm going to record it with Brooke Benton or Percy Sledge or somebody else. He said, this is a great song. It's a hit. So I knew that Jerry was excited. Jerry Wexler was one of the great songmen of all time. He was the guy who found Tennessee Waltz for Patti Page.
Really going back that far?
Yeah, and she confirmed that to me, by the way, when I finally met her. So I listened to the song, and I said, yeah, I love it. It's great. Even though I didn't write it, you know. But a good song is a good song, you know, and that'll take you where you want to go. So he had Arif Mardin write a chart, and we finished the Apollo on Thursday night, and 9 a.m. Friday morning, I was at Atlantic Studios, and we recorded it. And by Monday, we recorded it on Friday. By Monday, he had test pressings at every radio station in the country.
Wow.
That's how great a promotion man Jerry Wexler was. And it became a hit for me, you know, and so we thought I was on my way.
Yeah. What happened? What happens in situations like that?
Well, you know, Chip was my producer nominally, although Jerry really produced that record. He wasn't going to let anybody else, you know, put his hands on that song. But Chip was in the Air Force Reserve, and they got called up. And so I was, again, contractually bound to him. And he really wasn't in any position to work hard on my album. In fact, who had never mixed an album before, ended up having to mix it. You know, but Atlantic had great engineers, you know, Tom Dowd and all these other people. And so the mixes were fine, but we didn't have a hit on the record. And at that time, it's now 1969, I guess, 68. And music was changing drastically. You know, I was what was called at that time a blue-eyed soul singer. And that was—
When was this? What time frame?
1969 or so.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
the British bands were happening, the hippie bands were happening, and I didn't really know what to do with. I didn't know where I could fit in. You know, I couldn't be a heavy metal guy. You know, I couldn't be a disco guy. I couldn't be a wimpy singer-songwriter type. You know, I did what I did, and I didn't know how to adapt. And so for the next decade, I did what I called survival gigs. And at that time is what you called the brill building era had pretty much ended, because record companies were encouraging acts to write their own material, which in many cases the record company could publish
Mm-hmm.
and not have to pay, you know, an outside publisher. So as a songwriter, there wasn't much for me to do anymore. As a singer, I was suddenly out of style, and I just survived until Dolly Parton came along in '78.
Cool. Well, I guess not. I guess cool, but not cool. But you did survive, and
Oh,
not
yeah.
only survived, you came out of it pretty rosy after a while. But yeah. I think, yeah, I got a signal that we got another commercial coming up. You know, those things that we all pay attention to. But we're going to hear your number one song, and we want to talk about that when we come back. But we'll take a listen. And this is the Jeremiah Show with Jeremiah Higgins. My name is Mike Gormley, and we're with Billy Vera. We got everybody listed there except Dr. D. Nothing personal, but he's here too.
Just a quick note, Mike, at this moment, when I listen to this actual recording here, it's a live version. I just could not cut it out. So we're listening to the whole song.
We're listening to the whole song?
You're
Cool.
welcome. Enjoy your drive. Wherever you're listening, enjoy this song. It's great.
All right, we're clear. We're clear. Stand by. Oh, yes.
We played at the end, though, we also play Lonely Girl, the entire song as well.
Lonely
Oh, wow, cool.
girl.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
All right, this is the final segment. So here we go. No more breaks, no more commercials. You can take this if you wanted to the top of the hour. In 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back to the Mike Gormley Interview Series. Happy New Year. We're bringing you a gift, Billy Vera. Mike?
Hey, we just heard At This Moment, and it was quite a moment. I mean, just the whole story is incredible. But Billy Vera is here. He wrote it. He sang it with Billy and the Beaters. It got to be a #1 record. I want to ask how all that happened, because it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
But but before that, kind of jumping the gun a little bit, I'm just wondering what it was like after your years of working in New York, and then you moved to LA, and you're working hard out here, and then you have a #1 record. Was there a little bit of, well, going back to New York with a little, I told you guys attitude or something like that at all?
Not at all.
No?
The thing about New York friends, and I think maybe it's that way with, if you went back to Ottawa, I mean, they're proud of you. I to this day, I go back, whenever I go back. I was just back there in May. Bob Porter, the great jazz producer, DJ, and he passed away, and I went back for a memorial for him. And so I always see my old buddies when I'm back there, and they love you, man, because they know you win.
That's great.
And they're proud of you, is the way that works.
Cool.
So
Well, tell us now. Okay, so At This Moment, it's recorded for an album. It was produced by Jeff Baxter, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
We did it live at the Roxy in LA.
Yeah, Jeff's been on this show a couple of times. He's a friend of the show. And anyway, it's on an album. The album's around for a while. Could you tell us a story if you can?
Well, I wrote the song when I still lived in New York.
Mm.
In fact, that song actually brought me out to LA. My old manager from the '60s, he was a degenerate gambler, and he was always broke. So he called me up. I was in St. Croix playing a gig for some dope dealers on the Lam. that owned a little hotel.
Okay.
And they'd fly down their favorite bands to play for 6 weeks at a time in the winter, which was great. So anyway, Al tracked me down in St. Croix, and he said, listen, I'm on the balls of my ass, man. I'm really broken. And you're the only one I know that, you're the only great singer I know that hasn't made it yet. You know? You're the best of what's left, basically. And he said, let me try to get you a record deal. So he tried to get me a deal. I sent him a tape with At This Moment and another song on there. And he called me up and he said, I got you a deal, man. You remember Eddie Silvers? I said, sure, Eddie, great publisher. He said, Eddie doesn't believe you're alive. That's how down my career was. So he said, but he's willing to fly you out to prove you're still alive. So he flew me out, and I played At This Moment for him. And I turned around and Eddie's crying, crying. This hardened music publisher. He's got tears coming down his face. And he signed me to Warner Brothers Music as a songwriter, a songwriting deal. So that was that. Tried to get people to record it. You know, George Benson almost recorded it. Clive Davis sent back a snippy note saying it wasn't good enough for Whitney. And the funny thing was that I knew Whitney when she was 4 years old at the Apollo. Her mother brought her to see us sing.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, so finally we're playing the Troubadour for a year straight, every Monday night at midnight, the worst night of the week, and we're packing the house. All these A&R guys come around and they're snapping their fingers, stomping their feet, smiling, happy, but they don't reach for their wallet, you know, because they were looking for another Knack, if you remember the Knack. They were looking for a band like that, four-piece guitar band. And we were a horn band. No, we were the only horn band at that point. And certainly in LA. And finally, after a year, we get 3 offers in 1 week. I guess all those sound-alikes failed, as they usually do.
Yeah.
So it was 2 major labels and Alpha. And I said, you know, we're going to get lost on a major label. Let's go with Alpha. They got a whole bunch of people from A&M Records, so they're all pros. And I think we got a better shot with them. And they really.
And Alpha was a Japanese label that was opening new in the States.
New York, yeah, in LA offices, yeah. And so, and plus we were going to be the first act on the label. So they signed us. We ended up having a little hit record called I Can Take Care of Myself. And a mid-chart label, but that was a great start, more than I'd had in quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And the follow-up was At This Moment. And just then, the head of promotion had a fight with the boss and quit. And so we had nobody to promote the record. And it died at number 79. And shortly after that, the label, the Japanese pulled the plug on the label. And I was without a record deal for the next 5 years. And one day the phone rings. Meanwhile, I'm eking out a living acting, you know, playing Thug of the Week, which is what they hire you to do when you're a New Yorker. And the guy calls up on the phone. He says, "This is Billy Vera with the band." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, we were at the club the other night. I produce a show called Family Ties. I wrote an episode, and I think a song I heard you do would be perfect for this episode." So we determined that it was At This Moment. And I said, "Yeah, call Warner Brothers to license it from them." They did. I get a bag full of mail. Now, I had songs on TV shows before, but you know, they're usually in the background and it make a few bucks, that's the end of it. But this time I got mail. So I started calling whoever would pick up the phone to me at that point. And nobody was interested in letting me re-record the song. Finally, I'm having lunch with a friend of mine named Richard Foos, who owned a label called Rhino Records. And I told him the story. And I said, "How many records do you need to sell to break even, Richard?" He said, "Oh, a couple of thousand. We got low overhead here." I said, "Would you put out an album of my best and my Alpha stuff?" He said, sure. And he only did it because he liked me, you know. He never thought he'd make a nickel off of it. And he was happy to break even. So just then, following season, they used the song again on Family Ties. This time the girl breaks up with Michael J. Fox. Story of the song, boy loses girl. Story of the episode, boy loses girl. Boom, NBC calls up Rhino. They said, we got more mail and more phone calls than any time in the history of the network.
Wow.
And people are calling radio stations. People are calling, you know, record stores. And this grassroots hit comes along. No promotion, you know, no payola, no nothing. And the next thing you know, we're leaping over Bon Jovi, we're leaping over Madonna, all these people. And we got the #1 record in the world at 42 years old.
Amazing.
You know, and I got to be on American Bandstand for the first time.
Finally made it.
Yeah, finally made it to Bandstand, you know.
But what time span is that? A couple of years, right? Between the first release and.
Well, the first release on Alpha was 81.
Mhm.
And the record came out on Rhino in end of 86, and then it hit #1 in January of 87.
Did you, I know you'd play around LA. Did you tour per se, or how was the live thing?
We really couldn't tour because I had a 9-piece band and 2 crew. And it wasn't like these were kid musicians. These were professional guys that I had to pay them a decent salary, you know.
Yeah.
So I had all those plane fares, all those hotel rooms. You know, you couldn't jam 3-4 guys into a hotel room. Each guy had to have his own room. So it was fiscally impossible to do any great deal of touring. So, you know, it came to that. And so America didn't get to see what a great band that the Beaters were.
So what was it, 87 when that became a hit? Or yeah, 87. So 6 years. That's,
yeah.
Man, you never know.
You never know, man. That's show business. It's one of those stories, you know, that people hear it and they think, oh, I could do that. And the answer is really, no, you can't. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, I have a friend who he owned a little label called Varese Saraband.
I have an album out, 2 albums out.
I bet you do. And they were mainly at that time all soundtrack.
Yeah.
And but they put the soundtrack out for the film Ghost, and that Righteous Brothers song started taking off.
Yeah, and how?
And this was not a company that did promotion, didn't even know who to call it radio. They didn't do that kind of stuff.
No.
But whoever had the original, I've forgotten what label had the original.
Phil Spector owned it.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, they originally recorded it for Phil. And Bobby did it alone.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
On the version you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, anyway, all of a sudden, this is a smash hit, but it's because the label that had the original did promotion, but the song was from the movie. So my friend had this label. He had a hit record, and he had done nothing.
That's what that Varese is that kind of label, like Rhino. Same thing.
Yeah.
Rhino was an oldies label.
That's
funny.
So they ended up selling like 1.5 million records. Their average sale was about 5,000 to 10,000.
If that.
Yeah, if that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, it comes out of the blue sometimes, and it's sweet when it does.
It sure is, man. Those are the beautiful.
Little side story to that is I had a deal with Varese Saraband on something. I got them distribution, so I had a piece of that record, put my son through college.
Oh, good for you, man. I'm happy about that. I love when my friends make money.
Yeah. So anyway, where were we? Well, anyway, we're at this moment.
So we did Johnny Carson 9 times.
Cool.
Yeah, his guy, a friend of mine wrote his monologues, and he told me, he said, you know, you were Johnny's second favorite singer after Tony Bennett.
Wow.
I said, what? Really? He said, yeah. He said, that's why he had you play his 30th anniversary. You know, he said he'd have you every day, every week if you wanted. He loved you, man. And the same with Dick Clark. Dick was really good to me. He put me on every show that he had. So I didn't really have to tour that much. And shortly after that, I fell into voiceovers, and that was like minting money.
Yeah.
You go in there for, a half hour, you tell people, watch The Nanny tonight, 8/7 Central, or, drink Pepsi, whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not art, it's a craft, it's a skill, but that put my kid through college,
Well, and that's the thing I'm wondering about with writers today. I've asked other writers this on this show, just can that happen anymore to writers? That kind of income be generated by a hit song, whatever that may be?
Well, a song, it depends on the song. Like at this moment, it's the kind of song that people think they can sing.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that cruelly, but most people, because it's an emotional song, they tend to get melodramatic and over emotionalize it. Now, Michael Bublé recorded it,
Hmm.
and he's not that kind of a singer. And he just let the song do the work for him. And his album sold about 12 million copies. And I'm half publisher and 100% writer. And that paid for another one of my dreams, which was to make a big band album,
Ah, right.
which I put out on Varese Sarabande of all places. And that was, when it was suggested to me that I do that, I said, how do I make mine different than everybody else's? So this friend of mine said, well, what do you know better than anybody else? You know black music. I said, oh yeah. So I said, there's all these great black songwriters from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, James P. Johnson, Buddy Johnson. Why don't I make it sort of a tribute to the great black songwriters
Right.
of that era? And so I did, and it got played on a lot of the jazz stations. Didn't sell very much, but it got played a lot.
Yeah.
So,
You're also an author. You've got what, 3 books, I believe. Yeah, memoir, and then the specialty records, and what's the third one?
The third one is a novel called A Dollop of Toothpaste.
Oh, right.
It's sort of part mafia story, part political satire, part love story. But beyond all that, it's a story of these 3 different families, very different families, and how they come together and grow to love each other. Even the mafia guy.
Yeah.
The memoir is called Harlem to Hollywood. I called it that because I got known at the Apollo, and I came to Hollywood. And people have been bugging me for years. You got so many great stories. Why don't you write them down in a book? So I finally gave in, and we got a nice publisher, got a little advance, some books. And then these guys wanted to do a documentary on me. So they decided to call that Harlem to Hollywood as well. And you can see that on Amazon Prime. And then the middle book is, did I mention that's, yeah, I did. That's called Rip It Up, the Specialty Record Story. Yeah.
Why specialty records? I mean, I understand it's got a rich background, and it ties in very closely to the music you were paying attention to, you were loving.
Well, I was asked to write it. I did in my reissue work. I did a lot of work for them. I was in charge of their catalog, or reissuing their catalog, and I'd compile CDs. I did a whole specialty box set of their greatest records, 5 CD set. It was like, oh man, I was like a kid in a candy store, because they had so many great artists.
Yeah.
On that label. Larry Williams, the great Percy Mayfield. You know who he is?
Oh, sure.
Percy wrote Hit the Road Jack, and of course, well, this is. I finally got to meet Bob Dylan. When At This Moment Was hot, I was managed by Sandy Gallen, who managed Dolly, and many other big time people.
Yeah. Legendary.
Yeah, legendary guy. Every year he would do a Christmas party, and he'd invite all these A-list people, and I was a client, so I'd get invited. And I'd I do 20 minutes with talking to Dolly, and I'm not good at parties. I really don't. I'm not the kind of guy that go, "Hi, I'm Billy. Who are you?" You know,
Right.
I just wait for somebody to talk to me. You know, so I ended up spending a lot of time at the bar sipping on a Pepsi, which is my drink. And this woman comes up to me, and she said, "Hey, Billy, remember me?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Bob would like a word with you." I'm looking, "Bob who?" And I look over his shoulder. It's Dylan. So she brings him over, and he says some nice things about my acting, nothing about my music. So I guess he didn't like that too much. But he says, "You know what I love that you did? A great thing." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You put out those 2 Percy Mayfield albums." I said, "Whoa." I said, you hip to Percy?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "I believe what you said. You said he's the poet of the blues." And we spent the next literally 2.5 hours sitting there talking about Percy Mayfield.
That's amazing.
While Madonna, all these big, Shirley MacLaine, all these big stars are coming up to kiss the ring. And he's blowing them off, man, like rudely. He didn't care about those big, he wanted to talk about Percy Mayfield, man. And I'll tell you, I admired him more than ever for that. You know, anybody that gets Percy.
Yeah.
I mean, as a songwriter, I mean, a guy like that can write a line like, 2 years of being without her, 730 days, but I still remember her little brown body and her sweet little baby ways. 2 years of torture and my heart's in misery, but I'm doomed as a lover unless she comes back to me. I mean, that's a lyric worthy of Cole Porter, man.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Percy,
Absolutely.
right? I got to meet him. You know, one of the big thrills of my life.
You did. Wow.
And he spoke. He was from Louisiana too, and he spoke in that same poetic way that he wrote his great lyrics. You know, and I found that interesting. You know, that he would speak that way as well.
Well, that's yet another amazing story. I think you're right, Jeremiah. We need to have Billy come back at some point. There's just too many stories lying around. But
well, you could do the Billy Vera Mondays with Billy. You know.
Yeah, right.
I like that idea.
It'd be fantastic. So we're winding down here. We're got a lot more to talk about, but we're running out of time, which is one of those things you have to live with, right, Jeremiah?
Unfortunately, but again, Billy, Mondays with Billy. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll do it too, Billy.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Do it, brother. You know.
So we got. I'm not sure if we heard Me No World or we're about to hear Me No. I'm a little confused on where we are at this point.
We're leaving now with Lonely Girl. We're going to play the entire song by Billy
cool.
Vera. Yeah.
I'll take that. That's from my current album, Timeless.
Yeah.
Also,
And we came in with Mean Old World, Ricky Nelson, written by Billy Vera.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Billy, it's fantastic having you here. It's great to just chat about things, and we will do it again. And if Monday with Billy happens, let me know, right? Because I want to listen in.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike and Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
Pleasure's all ours for sure.
Thanks very much. So Jeremiah is going to say goodbye to everybody, but it is his show, so we let him do things like that.
Well, and I have to show up now because otherwise Mike says I'm at the beach slacking off. So
Yeah, right.
I have to show my face on camera. But it was a pleasure to listen to this interview. Really learned a lot, and what a great interview as usual, Mike. You've turned another great one in with Billy Vera. Thank you so much, Billy. And we are holding that show for you if you want Mondays with Billy.
You let me know.
I am right now. It's yours.
In the words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back.
We'll use that as a tagline. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Communicate, but listen more and evolve.
Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.
All right, we're clear.
Let's get a
right.
radio drop
Let
from
me get over
Mr.
here.
Vera.
We didn't even get into Billy's broadcasting background.
Oh my God.
Voiceover work is pretty amazing.
If Billy, really, if you're up for it, why don't you do a part 2, Mike? Because it's so, I love having this stuff recorded, and it's just so for fans of music, or, you know, just, it's just so great to hear the stories. And
It's our version of StoryCorps, you know? All right, we
and
want to get a,
and then we can play 7 more great songs.
that's
It
right.
gives us more
There you
opportunity.
go.
right.
Why not?
We want to get a voice drop from you if we can, Billy. Basically introduce yourself, give a little short little snippet of who you are and what you're all about. And you're listening to the Jeremiah Show.
And if you want to promote anything, if
Oh,
there's
there you
anything
go.
that you want to promote, drop that in.
Shameless self-promotion.
That's what we do.
All right. I will give you a countdown. All right. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. This is Billy Vera from At This Moment fame, or infamy, as you may wish. No, let me start that again.
3,
Hi, everybody. Okay.
I'm sorry. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. This is Billy Vera. And you might remember me from a little song called At This Moment from the show Family Ties. I'm happy to be here on the Jeremiah Show, and I'm going to be back too. You watch me now.
Love that.
I like it. I like it. I
That was
do.
good. We
Cool.
might as well get you to record Mondays with Billy. We're gonna come back to you on that one. All right, sir. What an honor, and thank you so much. Thank you, Mike. Great interview.
All right, everybody stay well out there.
You do the same, my friend. Do the same.
You done
Thanks a
good.
lot. Thanks,
Mike.
Billy.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, bye guys.
See you,
Bye-bye.
fellas.